I'm a geek, I'm a nerd, I'm a detail person. That's awesome. Is that my highest and best use for any of these CEOs and leaders? No, probably not.
Welcome to Confessions of a Vistage Chair. I'm your host, Ryan Hogan. We have real, behind-the-scenes conversations with Vistage Chairs who share honest stories and practical insights on leadership growth, peer advisory groups, and what actually happens in Vistage meetings. Let's pull back the curtain. You wound up getting a ton of engagement. So we put out these events on LinkedIn, and I kept getting notifications, and like people were liking it. And I just got out of a level 10 meeting. For some reason, I'm sitting in 3 of them right now. But I just got out of one, and my head of podcast, she was like, "Oh, Kirsten, she's popular." So anyhow, so now I'm like nervous. You're like,
apparently she doesn't ask my family that. She's not from around here.
I love it. All right, well, let's do this. Like, so talk to me about, you have a really, really interesting background, a lot of like clinical stuff. And so when, just for some color and context on me, I've been in Vistage now for 9 years. Ed Robinson was my first chair. He's an incredible human. And then Tom Leonard was my chair out of Seattle when I moved to Seattle. And then now it's Gary Brenglass. So I've been getting around Vistage for the last 9 years, just based upon relocations. But I haven't talked to somebody yet that's like come up through the clinical path. And so like, where did that start from you? Where, childhood early on, were you like, I want to get into the medical field?
No, I still don't know what I want to do. This is like a way station career, which I think is fun and interesting. And I hope more people adopt that mindset. When what I regret is I always wanted to work with animals. So CEOs are like the next best thing. No, I'm just kidding. No, I did always want to work with animals. And I just didn't. But I went into the psychology field, and then I found behavior analysis, which is like an offshoot, learning science, behavior, performance, measurement, all kinds of fun things in that field. And I got adopted into the field of autism pretty quickly because that's where it was really spreading I'm not going to name a decade, actually. We're gonna keep that under wraps. And that was really spreading early in my career, where it was really behavior analysis was taking off. And so I got wrapped up into the autism field, even though I had no personal connection, which is unusual, but fell in love with it. And so I did that for almost 2 decades, started at the bottom rung of an organization, direct care, one-on-one with the kids, which is just a blessing, but really, really hard work, God's work, moderate to severely afflicted kids, not in their typical school, but really, really rewarding work. And but I was not designed to stay in the classroom very long, so quickly moved out of the classroom into management and leadership. And I retired, left that organization as the CEO. So I went from the bottom to the top, across just shy of 2 decades, and learned a ton along that path of what to do and what not to do in leadership. And all of those lessons carried me forward into this, which has been the second major component of my career. And I had met Vistage along the way. I had an executive coach as a CEO, and he was the best practice chair of this area before Ed. And so he was my executive coach, and I had visited some Vistage groups. I hadn't quite joined yet. And then COVID hit. So then I had 4 kids to homeschool for a while, did some consulting, did some teaching. And then this, my former coach called up. He's like, "Hey, have you thought about being a Vistage chair?" And I was like, maybe in like 5 years or something like that. When I felt maybe I was ready to do something like that. He's like, "How about now?" It's like, sure. So I got recruited in. I jumped in with both feet, and haven't looked back. Loved the journey. I ran an amazing company with just phenomenal. I had an all-female leadership team, just phenomenal women, mothers, just at the top of their game. And we ran an awesome company that was just It was doing state of the art work. We were
Hmm.
doing amazing leadership work. And, so I loved that. And so the concept of, I can continue to run one really good company, or I can touch the lives of leaders that run, 10 and 15 companies and just, pebble in the pond. That ripple effect is hundreds of lives, thousands of lives, right? Of improving their experience of coming to work every day. Because as leaders, we can do a lot of damage
Yep.
as leaders, right? We can inflict a lot of pain in a company to our direct reports and on down the line, and or we can create amazing experiences for people who go home fulfilled and still have energy for Act Two, and create good communities, and that's the mission.
I love it. And what, like, when you think about your success in Vistage, a lot of the a lot, a lot,
I mean, I'm still here.
well, that's telling. Like,
Yeah.
there we go. When you think about the success, like, and getting a cohort off the ground and expanding cohorts and things like that, like,
Yeah.
what do you think has been kind of instrumental in that for you?
Probably my inability to quit.
Hmm.
It's a hard thing. Some people get groups that are transitioned, or people that are retiring, or those kinds of things, but to really start something from the ground up, and to say, there was nothing and now there is this thing, and to get a few people to just be like, hey, I'll roll the dice. Sure, I don't know what the hell that thing is, but sign me up.
Yeah.
That's a pretty intimidating thing. I have no sales background, no BD background. People moved across the country for the services we were providing at my company before. You didn't
Wow.
have to sell a thing.
Yeah.
you know, People left Disney to come and work in this little company, this little town, part of the town, because they wanted the services we had. Right. So
Wow.
I was like, sell? What do you mean sell?
Yep.
I don't sell anything. So, and I still don't sell anything. Like, this is a beautiful experience that, you can uh, come to the realization that it is something you truly do need, or not, and that's okay. And you'll probably have a fine career, or you can have an awesome career and an awesome experience, because leadership is so lonely. And mindsets are your biggest asset as a leader, not your team, not your tech, not the finances that come along with a good company. It is the mindsets that you have as a leader that produce exponential growth for you as a person and as a company. And so I think that we cultivate mindsets in our group.
When you think about those mindsets, like, are these generally, like, inherent in the people that rise to these ranks? Or these behaviors
Mm.
or mindsets that can be learned? Like, how do you think through that
Well, I definitely think,
mindset?
I mean, my clinical background, things can be learned, right? We are always able to create conditions under which we can perform and teach and those kinds of things. But I think there are some characteristics, especially in founders and people that start their own businesses. You have a business because you were good at something, right? And then you grow and you get a few people around, but there are skills and things associated with running a business that you didn't get taught because you had you had a skill, or you like doing this one thing. And there's this difference between the founder's trap, right? Like, how do I get from here to there when this is a
Yeah.
whole new set of skills? And I have to learn the mindset of letting go, and that I need to get things done through people and not by me. And I don't think those are inherent mindsets, because most leaders are doers, right? We get success and we are rewarded by doing more. And at a certain threshold, that's a finite mindset. And to burst beyond that, we need to adopt the mindset that I need to be more. I need to show up and invite more out of the people around me by who I am and how I show up for them, than just adding more to my to-do list by working 26 out of 24 hours, because
Hmm.
that's not going to get it done.
I love this. Like, where do you think that threshold is? So, like,
Mm,
if there's a founder or somebody that's out there
mm.
that's listening, and they're like, am I there yet? Am I at that place where I need to start, like, adopting this mindset of, I love what you just said there, of letting go.
Mm-hmm.
of delegating, of getting
Yeah,
things accomplished through others. Is that a monetary number? Is it a side? Like, how do you think through that threshold?
that's a good question. When they're ready not to be producing, that's one of the first signs, right? Like, um, I've seen them. I have a member that's a million and a half, and he needs to be letting go. And this in the same group, I have a member in a $1 billion company, and she's needing to let go. So I'm
Hmm.
not sure that there's like
Wow.
a threshold, but that the mindset can adapt to wherever you are, and there's something to let go no matter where you are.
Where do you think that fear comes from? Like the like
Oh, we're
at
all
the
control freaks. Come on. Can't believe you haven't asked that question. Where
is
does it
it is
come
there like
from?
a fear of like, well, if I stop doing these activities, then that million and a half is going to go to a
Yeah,
million?
sure. Yeah. I mean, we have so many fears. The fear of the loss. It won't get done. It won't get done as well. It's faster if I do it. I'm burdening the other person. They're already so overburdened, right? So then we have a fear of, you know, the other person leaving if I give them too much, right? Like it's all fear based. And 99% of that's all in our head because we're creating the story, living under the story, acting under the story, and reinforcing the story in our own head
Hmm.
over and over and over and over and over again.
And what's the trick there? Is the trick like telling ourselves a new story? Like how have you seen like some founders, some CEOs like
Yeah.
start to cross that chasm?
Well, one question I ask is what is most important? Who and what is most important to you?
Hmm.
Start there because often it's the foundation of, okay, then we can think about what fears are creeping in, what sort of unpleasant sensations or thoughts are creeping in that are getting in the way of, or just creating this cycle of like, this is what I really want, but when I think about that, this thought comes, and then here's what I do to get rid of that thought. Well, all I'm doing is sort of living in this amygdala cycle in my head, and I'm just avoiding this unpleasant thought by doing, I don't know, I'm either drinking or I'm exercising too much or I'm, doom scrolling, right? I'm avoiding some of these unpleasant feelings that come up when I think about this thing that I want instead of uh, saying, okay, what are the things that actually get me this thing that I want? Even though these feelings are going to come along for the ride, they're really not going to go away, right?
Hmm.
They're not going to go away. They're going to come along for the ride. So we have to be aware of those feelings that are there and, yes, and understand and reflect and always remember and always notice and always come back to what is most important, who and what is most important, and what are the things I can do that get me closer to that? What are the things that get me in contact with those things that I really want? And yes, the fear is going to show up. Yes, it's coming along for the ride. And I can still do some of these things that help me achieve what I want. And maybe that's letting go. And maybe I'll be afraid that that person will be overburdened. What does that conversation look like? Let's practice that. Let's talk about it. Maybe they're doing some things that have to go down the lane,
Yeah.
right? Maybe they're in their own cycle, their own doom cycle. But it's always like some of these things, like are we delegating? Are we this? Are we that? We're I'm careful, and I try to notice for myself as a coach, a chair, whatever. Um, what game am I playing, and what lane am I in? Right. I love solving problems. I love, like, well, let's talk about that performance issue. Well, let's talk about that data. Right? Like, I'm a geek. I'm a nerd. I'm a detail person. That's awesome. Is that my highest and best use for any of these CEOs and leaders? No, probably
Hmm.
not. Right? They have people around them that can do those things. I want to hold myself accountable for, are these leaders living the best life that they can? Are these leaders playing the biggest game that they can in their companies? Do they see the greatness that they have inside of them? Do they see what they are capable of? Right? All I want to be that little voice in their head that reminds them of those things. And that when maybe we're in these details, let's take it up a level, right? Are we talking about the biggest thing that we could be right now? How is this problem affecting the life you want to lead right now? Because we can solve this little problem. There'll just be another one tomorrow.
Yeah, that's 20 years now of entrepreneurship, what I've realized is like the cycle never stops until you exit. I exited one through bankruptcy, and so that's one way to exit.
Yeah, sure.
And then sold another one. But that's, one thing that I've discovered is like the problem, like that's actually business. Like that's the
You want
game.
problems. Yeah, problems are life. Problems are business. Problems are life. They're that. It's a sign that things are happening. Now, I used to say to my team, like, I don't mind that we've got problems. I don't mind that we have issues. I care if we have the same one over
Mm,
and over and over again. Then I'm kind of annoyed.
yeah.
But the fact that we have new things to solve, that's awesome.
Do you think that you keyed in on this, like bringing out the best in people, make sure they're living
Yeah.
their best lives? Like some of this stuff doesn't sound very business related. Like, is this the
Yeah.
type of philosophy that you believe applies to, let's say, most or all people inside of organizations, and that's how leaders should be thinking about their people?
Yeah. 100%. You don't separate. You don't keep your family at home when you get to work, and you don't leave work at home when you get home, right? Those things bleed into each other, whether it's because you're distracted, you can't get off your phone, you're sitting in the driveway finishing a phone call, and you have no, buffer before you get in, and then you snap at your kids as soon as you get in, or you snap at your spouse as soon as you get in. Is that your authentic self? Is that how you wanted to walk in? Was that your intention for your best parenting, your best, right, partnership? Probably not. And so my approach, maybe not be everybody's, but my approach is they interact and they affect one another. And so we need to be able to talk about both. And so folks have to be comfortable talking deeply into the business things and deeply into the personal things, because they affect one another. There's a
Hmm.
saying, and I was trained in the crucial conversations work, some good stuff. And one of their sayings is, if we don't talk it out, we're going to act it out.
Hmm.
And if you don't bring these things to the surface and solve them, it's going to leak out in your behavior towards others. And that's a problem, especially for leaders. We like to say in my group, the leader brings the weather. If you're showing up grumpy every day, what do you think your employees think of that you think about them? Even though it has nothing to do with them, you showed up grumpy. You didn't say hello. You didn't call them by name. You didn't make eye contact. You're throwing your papers in when you get to the meeting, right? You're huffing and puffing. Well, they think they did something wrong because they're
Yep.
going to make it about them, and they're going to fill in the blanks with the worst possible story ever, right? It's not what you intended, but you're not, you're letting it leak out. And as leaders, we're just always watched, right? People are
Yep.
watching what we wear, people are watching what we say, and that's exhausting. It is truly, truly exhausting. And I don't know that we acknowledge that enough for leaders. It's exhausting.
In the Navy, a part of what you're talking about is we call it intrusive leadership, and so we're
Mm,
we're very in tune to mostly negative things, drinking and driving, and
yeah.
instances like that. And so we talk about intrusive leadership of like, going into a long weekend or going into I think we call it the 101 days of summer. Like we get
Mm,
very intrusive in the questions that we ask our sailors, and making sure that they've got plans and backup plans and everything else to make sure
okay.
that they're set up. What are some ways that in the business setting that some of these taboo conversations? Because for me, if I had not lived through the experience of, I started off enlisted. I enlisted. My mom signed my permission slip at 17 years old. I eventually
Oh,
became an officer through a commissioning program. But if I didn't live those 10, 12 years as enlisted, I never
yeah.
would have understood the perspective that I had as an E1 twice. May have gotten in a little bit of trouble.
Uh-oh. There's a
Uh,
story. There's a story there.
that's for beers. But I never would have had that perspective of like
Yeah.
how people are looking at me. And so when you think about some of these like
Mm.
conversations, intrusive leaderships, taboo, bringing in personal, like how do you? It's not a fourth wall, but like how do you break through that type of barrier when it's a business environment or it's a company and like we handle business here, not what's going on at home?
I don't know. I'm not seeing that wall And I don't know if those are cultural issues, if those are geographical issues. I see a lot more the other way, where leaders need to almost create barriers when there's too much personal coming to the workplace in
Interesting.
their employees, right? And it's like, oh, but I know so much about this employee, I almost am going to make a poor decision because I know too much instead of the right decision for the business.
Hmm.
So I actually see it the other way. Um, but I don't want to avoid your question. I mean, I think they model it, right? We
Hmm.
get what we demonstrate. And so if we are demonstrating buttoned up, you know, facade, I certainly demonstrated this for a few years because I thought that was the role, right? I was a very young CEO, female, and I thought the role was this very tight, not open, not vulnerable. I don't make mistakes, you know, and it didn't land very well. And I didn't get shocking. I look back, I'm like such an idiot. But you have to go through some of these things sometimes and get your scars and learn. I mean, my goal now is to help people avoid at least some of the scars. But the more open, the more vulnerable, the more you can tell your own human stories and mistake stories and things like that, people bring their entire selves to work.
Hmm.
And don't we want 100% of people working towards the mission, working towards the goals that you have set versus, well, on my break, I'm also looking for my next job, right? I think the Gallup poll recently is 20% of employees are engaged. 20%. That means 1/5 of your workforce is actually working for you. That's bad.
Does that, like, where should an organization start? The whole notion, and we actually just talked about this at my company, which was like
Mhm.
an engagement survey, and we actually just said, hey, time out before we roll this out. Because one of the mistakes that I made at Hunt to Killer was
Mm.
we rolled out. We were probably maybe about 60 people at that point,
Mhm.
and we really wanted to collect some good feedback, and so we were doing a net promoter score for all of
Sure.
our customers, but we were doing nothing internally, and so
Mhm. Mhm.
we rolled it out. And one, be careful what you ask for, because you're
Oh
gonna
yeah.
you're gonna you're
You
gonna get
need
the
to
answers. And the mistake that we made was not asking the question, it was being ill prepared to take action at that
on
point.
the answers. Yeah.
We were so overburdened with all the other activities happening in the organization that,
Yeah.
like, we didn't have time to go back, and it
Yeah.
was actually like it was a net negative for us,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
If
um
you know you can't respond and or take action, don't ask because that's worse.
yeah,
That's worse. Oh, they asked me, but then they didn't do anything about it. I never heard anything about it. So don't
that's what
ever
we
ask
got.
again.
and and that
Yeah.
communication, by the way, like, then we learned our lesson, and so the
Yeah,
next
sure.
time we did it, we took action. And what did we fail to do then? We failed to communicate it. So then
But
when
you
we
took
did the
action.
next one, they were like, we're not doing these anymore because you just, and then we're like, no, we took all the action. So then we had to
But you didn't
go
tell them.
back. That was it.
Right. I
That
know.
was it.
Oh, and the communication is the biggest part. Even if you take action or don't take action, tell them what you did or did not do.
Yeah.
I heard you. Here's what I heard. Is this right? Is this wrong? Here's what we can do. Here's what we can't do. That looping back to that, people want to feel heard. They want to be seen and they want to feel heard. We come out of the womb like that, right? Like we are social beings and I'm not a number. And I think this next generation or two of employees is really pushing the bar up towards management of really higher order management. You just can't have this command and control anymore. Just come and do the job. We expect you, to not ask questions and to get it done. And that hasn't been working for like the last 5 years, and I don't think it's ever going to work again. They're
Yeah.
really pushing the bar on management. And there's science of management. Leadership is an art. We're a little bit more fuzzy on that, but there are plenty of research around good management practices. I'm hoping it sees its heyday
Yeah.
as somebody who's researched it and taught it in college. There's tons of it out there, and we just need to start applying it. And it can be very human centered. It can be, what does the person value? What is important to you? Here's what's important to the company. Here's that overlap. We want what's best for you. Here's how we create the experience with the company that gets us discretionary effort, right? That's a term out there. There's the effort that you give for what we pay you, and then everything above that is discretionary effort, and all of that is gravy, right? And
Mhm.
all of that comes from those other sort of, what does your environment look like? How does your boss interact with you? How engaged are you outside of just doing the basics? And that discretionary effort is the difference between a good company and a great company.
All right, quick break, friends. Do you find it impossible to hire and retain top sales talent? Or worse, are you paying insane recruiter fees who are all using outdated hiring processes? Yeah, I was too. At Hunt to Killer, we were spending hundreds of thousands on recruiter agency fees. And after I sold that company in 2025, I started Talent Harbor. And the whole vision here was to make sales recruiting accessible to small and medium sized businesses, because the organizations that can hire and retain world class people are the ones that ultimately win. Most organizations rely on things like ZipRecruiter or LinkedIn, and they get hundreds, if not thousands, of resumes. But we find that the best salespeople are already perfectly placed somewhere else. And that's why our approach is to go after them. And we do that through a business model called recruiting as a service. We do not charge commissions. We do not have success fees. We don't have contracts. We don't have long-term engagements. And we become an extension of your team as expert sales recruiters. If you're tired of the same old recruiters and want to actually grow your sales team, check us out at talentharbor.com. That's Talent Harbor, TALENTHARBOR.com. Let's get your next sales superstar hired. Maybe this was a part of what you were just talking about, of like good management.
Yeah.
Is good management like, 7 steps and you have to follow these 7 steps and that's what, or is like, or they're like 1 or 2 things where it's like, hey, all of this stuff is good to have. These are the must-haves. Like, if you don't do
Yeah.
this, the ship has sailed. Like, how do you think about that in forms of like great management?
There's probably like a good tier one, and then there's like, okay, how deep and complicated do you want to get, right? And you could put layer on tier two, tier three. But tier one, you need to know your people. Are
Mm.
you talking to your people? Do you know their names, their kids' names, what they value, why they're there, what their next step is in their career? Do you go to Chick-fil-A and on their name tag, is their name and their next job,
Oh, no way.
right? I read that somewhere. So, I
Yeah.
mean, my little town is too small for Chick-fil-A. So I don't have a Chick-fil-A, but I read this. So somebody can go and fact check this. But, the idea being like, Chick-fil-A knows they're not lifers, right?
Yeah.
But they've learned about this employee enough that says, this is what I'm working for,
Mm.
right? It's just the concept of, I know who you are, I know what you value, and I know what you want to do next. And therefore, maybe that's at this company if I can arrange it as a good manager or skip level manager, right? And if not, I at least know what's coming.
I love that.
It's all going to be tech.
what what do you tell people with terrible memories and
Oh,
like
nothing.
is this, is this keep a cheat sheet, like make
We
sure
should
that,
get my
yeah.
husband in on the. We'll bring my husband in next. So here's what I tell her all the time. Yes, I had a sheet for every employee. And you should know, I hate to say the word should, it is in your best interest to know what they value and what is reinforcing to them. So, what gets you more behavior out of that employee? What gets you more performance, right? Do they like attaboys and attagirls in public or in private? Do they like little gifts, right? There's the book of the 4 love languages of work. Fine. Something like that is a good concept, right? But the idea being, what is going to get you more performance from that employee? And they're all individual, right? Reinforcement is contingent and it's individual, and it needs to be timely, right? Our raise is not going to solve performance issues
Hmm.
ever.
Yes. There's my former commanding officer, he's still in, he's off to bigger and better things.
Nice.
um he knew where everybody graduated from school, regardless if it was like high school or college or whatever it
Nice.
is. And he would pass you and he would like call out the mascot or call out this, call out that. he's just an incredibly smart human. And so like, I'm a little jealous because I can't remember
Mm.
things like that, but it just makes you feel seen. Like I walk by
Yeah,
him and I haven't
right?
seen him in like, well, cause I'm in the reserves. I haven't seen him in a month. And he's like, "Hey, go Terps. Saw the football game this weekend. Sorry about the, whatever the case." I'm like, how does he
Yeah,
remember that?
yeah. But isn't that a beautiful, and how did you feel, when you walked by?
Amazing.
Yeah, that's the feeling we want to create for other people. Yeah.
Hmm.
Some people use little tricks. Like there's all kinds of studied this in undergrad, metamnemonic devices where you can learn to associate words and pictures. How do you try to remember things about people? I'm really bad with just people's names. I'm glad your
Hmm.
name is on the screen, for God's sake, right? Like, but how can you remember these things about people? Just preparing, right? We had a speaker last week for my group. It was the third time he came.
Hmm.
He still had notes from the first two times he came, and he just wrote notes. He remembered people's names. He remembered people's kids' names, right? And it's about taking notes and keeping those things. And people, you could just see how valuable that was to be seen in that way. So I don't think it doesn't matter how you do it. I think it matters that you do it.
Okay. There's another thing. I hate to even like pull back off this because that's like,
I was in the weeds though.
one of the things that is telling about it is like this stuff takes effort. That I think all too often we look at these types of things and like, my assumption is my commanding officer has a great memory. There was this commanding
Right.
officer that I had when I was E1 twice. So I saw him for something not so fun. But he remembered everybody's birthdays.
Hmm.
And you'd be like, how does he know that? And to us, it looks like magic, but I'm willing to
Right.
bet to them,
They're
it's
doing
not because
something.
they're doing
It's
something.
an intention.
And that's I think the
Mhm.
point here is like this takes work, and being a good
Right.
manager is not just like were these things accomplished. It's like there's a whole human component that
Yeah.
takes energy.
What I like about what you said is being a manager takes the work, right? We often promote people into management because that's just the next logical step, instead of, you really like people. You really want to see people succeed. People really like you, right?
Hmm.
That there is a chemistry piece to that, and people who are good managers, their reinforcement is that other people are doing well, that other people are growing.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that be too prevalent in people thinking about that as a concept in terms of what makes a good manager. Where are rein, where are their reinforcements placed? What gets them going, right?
Yep.
I sit and think about, my members and like the things that they're challenged with and the things that are going on in their company. I'm like, oh, I wonder how that's going. And I wonder how that's going. I'm motivated to know how things are going and to be like, I wonder if that worked out. And, like, they're not sitting at home thinking about me like that. That's okay. Right. But what motivates me is that, that epiphany we had is still playing out a week or
Mhm.
two later. Right. And that they can come back and be like, here's what I did with that. And I'm like, oh, right. That's what
Yeah.
motivates me. Right. And so that type of thing, I think, is the layer for managers versus just, well, you're the best at sales, so you're going to be the sales manager. Like, how many times has that not worked out?
A bunch. I had a long day. We happen to be in the business of recruiting salespeople. I'm not a recruiter. I should qualify that. I just came out of the murder mystery business. Um, but I've partnered with an amazing co-founder, and like I just had what do they call it? A knockout, drag out, like
Mm,
debate with somebody last week over that, where they're like, "That's absolutely, you have to be a great salesman in order to be a great sales leader." I'm like, like maybe there's a little bit of subject matter expertise, but I would argue that 80% is being a good leader and being a good manager, not being
right.
the best salesperson.
Right.
Um,
Because they're
anyhow,
a salesperson cares about their sales,
yeah, it's an individual contributor.
not
It's
other people.
completely different. Yeah.
So all these problems are still there. Job security, all these problems are still there.
Yes. How do you vet for that? So I loved what you just said right there, because like you basically defined me. Like I don't like,
Hmm.
my energy comes from other people succeeding, and it doesn't
Hmm.
matter whether it's like uh, as a part of the company or as a part of them personally. Like when they
Mm,
are excelling or they're achieving something that's important to them, like I get satisfaction out of that. And so
Mm-hmm.
like that's how I operate. It sounds like you operate the same way. How do you vet for that? Like, as a business leader, and they're like, oh, I'm going to promote this individual contributor into a manager, and your hypothesis, or probably
Mm-hmm.
validated, is like, first and foremost, they have to love people,
Yeah.
and believe in people and motivate and
Love
inspire
people.
people.
There's a company around here. It's a sanitation company.
Uh-huh.
Their tagline is "We love people."
Int-
Literally, no
Interesting.
lie. They do like porta potties and stuff like that. We love people. They are so successful. They have like 0.2 turnover. Like sanitation.
That's
We
wild.
love we love people. They have their own little internal college. They're so it's just I interviewed him on my podcast, and it's just so when you said like has to love people, I'm like, oh, made me think of that, and it's just you have to operationalize that. But first, the leader has to figure it out, right? And so, if the leader hasn't figured it out, they certainly can't roll it down. The questions I would ask, so if somebody's talking about that and I'm for whatever reason they've brought it up, I'm going to challenge what does success look like in this role? Have you defined success in this role, not the role they're coming from? Define success in the next role. What are the skills, the outputs, the measurables? What does good look like? That's the
Mhm.
simplest question I can ask. What does good look like in this role? And if they haven't thought through that, that's the first place because that discovery process, they'll be like, well, they need to do, right? And they'll kind of get there. I'm like, okay, great. Has this candidate shown that in any areas? Right. You barely even have to get to that point because once they're kind of writing out, they're like, oh,
Yeah.
you know, hmm, it's, but again, these are solving the issue challenges.
I feel like this is like a hard reverse, but I did want to come back to it because we were talking. It's such a hard reverse because like letting go was 25 minutes ago, um, but
Time
in the
is
let
whatever.
in like the fear and like getting stuff done through others, and this
Yeah.
ties back to management and kind of what we're talking about, which is there's this notion of like 80% is good enough. So like no one's ever
Mhm.
gonna be at the do you subscribe to that, or like is that also your belief, or do you think about that whole like, well, as long as you can get 80% there with this person, then you need to let go.
Well, what is the 80%? I think 80% is a shortcut language we use when we haven't defined what is good, right? What is a good one? What are the criteria that you need this to be done by or to be evaluated by? So, I am very criteria oriented. I had a member one time, she was very frustrated um, with her executives. I mean, these are hundreds of millions of dollars, in programs and revenues that these people are over. And she's like, their executive thinking is just not happening. I was like, what is executive thinking? Like, but that's okay. Like, get the frustration out, and then we'll put it on the table and we'll stir it around and we'll figure it out. And we got to the place was, well, when I get a document or a proposal, it's missing things and it's this and it's that, and I still have to ask all of these questions. So I'm just like taking notes while she's just sort of like spewing it all out. And I was like, so here's what I've heard. You have 7 criteria for getting a proposal from your executives. And I listened to them out, and she's like, son of a bitch, that's it. So I
Yeah.
was like, so if you got a proposal that included all of these things, would you say that they had executive thinking? She's like, yes. I'm like, great. So now we need to set criteria prior to them. They need to learn these criteria. You need to explain what they mean. You need to show them what a good one is, right? And then it doesn't come to you until it has all of these things. And I think that's the 80% kind of idea is, what is the 80%? Do we actually take the time? And when you want to be a good delegator, you have to have some patience. You have to allow some iteration by the other people, but you also have to be able to communicate standards. And I think too often we let things be, what's the term? Inside your head and not
Mhm.
overt. They're covert, and we don't make them overt for our staff. And that puts them at a disadvantage. And then we get frustrated and we blame them. And it's like, well, it's in your head and you didn't get it out.
Yeah.
That's you problem. That's not a them problem. I mean, like most leadership is a us problem, not a them problem. So
it's so it only becomes an issue is like after you've outlined and explained all
yeah,
these things, if it's still not getting there.
and
But
they
if you
can't get
haven't
it, and
done,
can't get it, and
yeah,
can't get it, and then that's a skill issue. If they've given all the resources, they're motivated, they've been shown how to do it. You put a gun to their head, they could do it, but they're just not doing it. Like, okay, well, it's time to
yeah.
release them to the workforce.
I was talking to somebody last week, and we were talking about management, and he was like, I'm at a point in my career where I can no longer manage the front line. Um, and I thought it was really interesting, and I've done a lot of reflection on that of like I don't know. I don't know if it's like a competency issue of like, you've kind of like not you as in you, Kirsten, but just like a leader has like lost their ability to get like that granular, and therefore they can
Mm,
only be work. But anyhow, curious and kind of your take on that, because I've been thinking about that a lot over the last week, because I've been struggling as a leader. Like I feel like I've been going back, and
slows
it
you
goes,
down. It
and
slows you
it's
down.
right
Yeah.
along with what you're saying with like,
Yeah.
it's not a them problem, it's a me problem. Like
Yeah.
I'm not slowing down
Hmm.
to outline and articulate exactly
Right.
what good looks like.
Right.
um and so it's a me problem. It's just a matter of like, now I've been getting to like, but am I the one to solve that? Meaning like, do I
Yeah.
need someone to help me solve that for
Hmm.
them? Therefore, there's an extra layer, or do I need to kind of redevelop, like go backwards, figure all this out, and then move forward again? I don't know.
Another idea is somebody doing it well that you can
Hmm.
point to,
Oof.
right? So is there somebody that is a uh, positive example of doing it well? Then great. How do we extract their performance, document it, log it, video it, AI it? I don't know if that's a verb. In some way capture, oh, this person is the shining example. We've got plenty of non-examples, but we have this example as a positive example. Here's the good one. We just need to, in some way, extract it in a way that it becomes teachable and
Yeah,
replicable and excludes you in that process. Yeah. And you
I
can
like
you
that.
can fact check it, right? Just like when we give processes and things like that to AI, the human still has to come in and say like, "Yep, that was right. Yep, that was right. Yep, that was right. Yep, that was right." You still may have to review what is extracted and be like, "Yes, yes, yes. Nope, I've changed my thinking on that. Yes, yes, yes." And then you can move that forward. But that's
Hmm.
another way to get it done but not have you in the process.
I'm only going to bring it up because you brought it up, and now
Uh-oh.
I'm deeply curious in your kind of take on this. Like, where do you think AI is taking us right now? Like, where,
To the moon?
as business. I thought that's Elon. I don't know, or NASA or
Well, I
somebody.
think that's the
It's,
same thing.
um, that was good. As business leader, we've been trying to think through this of like, how do we make sure that we're properly educating and teaching and
Yeah.
training and coaching, while at the same time like not getting left behind but not being too far ahead and getting head over skis. Like you're interacting with business leaders every single day, you're bringing
Mhm.
them together in cohorts. Like, what are you seeing, and how are you thinking through kind of the implementation of AI inside of organizations?
I think it runs the gamut. I think there's a lot of narratives of it's failing, we're trying and it's failing. But the reality is 78% of businesses are using it in some way. So it can't, 90% of projects can't be failing if 78% of businesses are actually using it. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on where you're getting your news from and who you're listening to. There's a lot of people who want to use it and sort of take the I've got the hammer, where are the nails approach,
Mm,
right? I've got the hammer, I bought my AI product, and then I'm walking through the company hitting things,
yeah.
right? And I think you know, I'm concerned that approach may do more damage. You may have more holes than you have uh, actual solved problems. The approach I've seen be a little more effective is, who are your people willing to sit in a room with some donuts and some ideas and a computer and be like, hey, where could we 10x ourselves? where are we stuck? What are the constraints we have as a company that if we 10x that, we'll go here? Where do we want to be? And it starts from your vision statement. It starts from your value proposition in terms of this is what we're trying to achieve, all but for dot, dot, dot. Okay, all but for. All right, there's your starting point. So you're all but for. If you could get rid of that or 10x that or get that out of the way, to me, that's sort of the place where you're like, okay, well, how could AI help us with that? Get your people who aren't afraid, a little bit of tech savvy, get some donuts, get in the room, have them meet every week. And it's consistency over intensity for something like this. They'll solve one problem, they'll get some confidence, they'll solve another problem. People will get more comfortable with it. People will want to add to the committee, join, you talk about it at the staff meeting. I've seen that be a lot more successful than sort of, we're going to buy this tool and then we're going to walk around and see how it'll work in all these different places. Oh, shit. Not so good. Yeah. And then 10xing yourself as a leader, right? Like all of the things, anything that is, repetitious for you as a leader. How can you curate your information and have it prompt you and do different tasks that are, so mundane and replicable, those kinds of things. Those are helpful as well for leaders.
I love what you just said there about the committee or like volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at this as like, oh, and by the way, this statistic, I just read the Vistage report yesterday. I'm still on Ed's mailing list and he just sends out great information.
So helpful.
But I just read that statistic last night. And I sent that same report to my team because as much of an unlock AI is, it also is quite a bit of a liability if you're not putting in the right securities and the right training. And so
my husband's a CISO. I hear about it all the time.
Oh, interesting. That's got to be wild to be in that position right now.
Dinner time's great. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I bring it up, and he's like one of the first people who would say this to me. I'm like, "Well, what about AI?" He's like, "What about AI? What do you want to do? Like, what's your problem? What about AI? I don't understand what you actually want to do." You'd be kind of the first person to ask me those questions. I'm like, oh, so we're not just like buying the thing and walking around. I was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense. So I think you need the sort of those people in your organization because it's flashy, right? It is the ultimate squirrel syndrome. And you want people to be excited and you want the guardrails so that, if you're government regulated or you've got, PHI or PII or anything like that, you need to be a little more careful, for sure. But you also don't want to be left by the side of the road.
Yeah. And I love the community. I used this trick. So at Hunt a Killer, eventually we got to a place where I was this new shiny object called Slack. And so I got everybody on Slack and everybody's like, gosh, now we got email, we got text messaging, now we got Slack. Like, what are we doing here?
Right.
And so they didn't know this, but they knew it. They just didn't understand that for me, it was like trying to get them to adopt. But we started Tuesday morning jokes. And so somebody would put their best jokes in there and then other people would start. And then next thing I knew, 100% of the company had adopted. And I loved what you had just said there of like, starting off with like just seeing who wants to raise their hand. We're doing a crawl, walk, run, and we're not even crawling yet. But a big part of crawling is just to bring someone from the outside inside to help us think through like, what is Claude? What is this co-work? What are these different things? What are these tools? And that's just like the crawl phase. Like, hey, here's these things. Here's prompts. Here's how to use them. And then walk is like, here's how to use them specifically for your role. And then maybe we get to a place of where we start creating automations. But I love what you just said there, where it's like, let them identify who is eager to get started first, because like that will naturally kind of spread throughout the organization.
100%. Nobody likes things jammed down their throat, and you'll get the discretionary effort if you look for people, even cross-functionally, right, that are just interested, right? Like, yeah, I'm doing this stuff at home anyway. Great, do it here, and we'll feed you some donuts, right?
Yeah.
And it's amazing what donuts will do. But yeah, I think that, and your joke thing is the perfect example. That is, here is this potentially or no negative, and I'm pairing it with a positive. Oh, I can't see my hands. And I'm pairing it with a positive thing, right? And then you got the behavior you wanted, which was adoption, right? That is that's a basic behavioral principle that you put into management. It's perfect.
There,
Yeah.
there we go.
That's the science. Come to life.
Okay, I feel like we that's okay. We'll talk. I feel like we
You
didn't
didn't
get
have
too
an
much in.
agenda. What are you upset about? You didn't have an agenda, you said.
Well, I at least wanted to hear more about the Vistage stuff. I guess. Well, let's start with this. Just kind of last two questions, but it really evolves around like, what do you, when you're looking for members and getting out there and kind of
Yeah.
the whole pitch, like, what does a great
Okay.
member look like to you? The pitch,
Well,
yeah.
I don't sell. I have one CE group. We are referral only. So members have to refer into this group. And then they have, I was just speaking with one of our newer members, and she's going to come out to a coffee meeting to meet somebody next week. And she's like, well, she was telling her assistant, she's like, well, what you have to do is you have to be referred, and then you have to go have coffee. And if they like you, you're allowed to come, and then you can visit, and then you have to sacrifice a goat, and then you can enjoy. Well, we had some farm animal jokes. Lots of people have chickens, lots of people have goats, and it became a whole thing. But that's, I mean, basically is you have to be, for us, you know, when I was building, certainly, you had to cold call and you had to have a pitch and get hung up on 100 times, and, I'm crying, and my husband's like, you can do it. Um, and my therapy bills were really high. No, I always said, and I have some non-traditional members that aren't necessarily were heads of the company. Some became heads and some have moved in different places. But I always said it is the size and the caliber of the person, not the company, that makes the member.
Hmm.
And so we do span 1 million to 1 billion in this group. And if you walked in, you would not know who was who.
Yep.
And I think that's a beautiful thing. We do have a no a-hole rule, so there's no egos that walk into the room. They wouldn't last. You do have to be able to play head and heart. We have talked about divorce, addiction, suicide, abuse, chronic illness, really heavy topics in our group. And there has to be space for all of that. So you have to be able to hold space, and you have to be willing to bring what is your biggest issue, whether it's at home or at the company in. Those have to get weeded out pretty quickly, and referrals are the best way to do that because somebody already thinks you belong. And then, I meet them, and then I set up a coffee meeting with a couple other people before they come and visit for the whole group. But that has really worked out well. We really have not had to lose or get rid of anybody for not fitting, which I think is pretty important. We want new people, and people do move on and or move away and things like that, but there's value in long-term relationships.
Yep.
So,
I
yeah.
I thought that was like with I love the whole referral only. Like Ed vetted everybody, and
Mhm.
then that person had to do an interview with
Mhm.
like different people in the group, and then the group had to come
Yeah.
together and vote. I feel like that's how, maintaining that culture
Right.
and making
Right.
sure that, you said, opening and creating and holding that space is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My motto is the group is the prize. So the group has created itself. It is an entity of itself, and it has a personality, and it has a benefit, and it is a living thing to me, the group, and it's the prize, right? So the new nominee has to be worthy of the group to come in. It's not like, oh, I'll take anybody. Uh, because the sanctity of the group cannot be disrupted, and so that new person has to fit well enough that it's not like they can't be different in some way, and we want differences, of course, because perspectives are the valuable piece here. But the first principle kind of mindset, the core values of being open, being honest, being vulnerable, and being giving, those all come first.
Hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Kirsten, if someone just listened to this and they're like, I need to talk to her. I need to just at least say hello. It sounds like they're probably not getting into your group unless they find someone else. But
We'll see that
um,
make a friendship.
what would be the best way for someone to get a hold of you?
Probably my website, I guess, kirstenyurich.com. There's a way to contact me on there.
Love it.
Easy peasy.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on. Thanks,
Ryan. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We went everywhere.
I know this was really good. A lot of
Good.
lessons learned. I've like 2 pages now of just amazing notes. So
leave them better. That is the motto.
There we go.
Helpful and sweet.
Thanks again. I appreciate you taking the time.
You're so welcome, Ryan.